Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's webcast, we're taking a look at data protection and artificial intelligence. In this new era of AI, data is more important than ever. Really, data is the very foundation of AI. But the importance of data raises all sorts of questions about cybersecurity. How do you protect your data in this new era? To answer that question, I'm joined by Rob Emsley, Director of Data Protection Product Marketing at Dell. Rob, very good to have you with us today.
Yep, lovely to be with you, James. Always good to talk about my favorite topic of data protection.
Great. So I think it's interesting about AI. I think sometimes companies think, oh, we can bring in some AI, sprinkle over the software, it's all going to be a good, but it turns out that, hey, data is super important when it comes to AI. AI goes nowhere without data, which means, of course, protecting data becomes more important than ever. How do you see the evolving cyber threat landscape here in the age of AI?
Yeah, well, I think that we're living in interesting times with respect to AI being an aid to both organizations and vendors that develop data protection solutions to help deliver cybersecurity and, more importantly, cyber resilience in a better way, but also the emergence of generative AI is something which, unfortunately, the bad actors can also leverage.
Mm-hmm.
I think that leveraging generative AI for such things as better social engineering, better phishing emails that are harder for human beings to detect, based upon the ability to develop content that is more human-like, I think makes it so important in today's environments to really think hard and fast about how you're going to secure your data, as you say, which remains to be the lifeblood of most organizations.
Right. So you're really saying that it's that generative AI and AI is sort of a mixed bag, in that the good folks have it and the bad folks have it. And is there someone who's winning that battle currently, or is it hard to say?
I think I would say that the defense of the environment is probably ahead of the game. Certainly we continue to see cyber attacks on the increase. Certainly, I think that no matter how good your defenses are, the challenge is that bad actors will find a way to often get through them. And I think that's why we often talk about the balance between preventative measures and measures to allow you to recover when bad things happen. So this concept of cybersecurity versus cyber resilience, I think, becomes even more important nowadays, because the ability for bad actors to do things more quickly using generative AI techniques that maybe were much more manual in the past now increases the speed that they can probe your defenses. They can look across your IT infrastructure for places where maybe you haven't had the best of hygiene, and you've left the back door open. And the ability for bad actors to find those vulnerabilities, is definitely an area of opportunity for bad actors when they leverage generative AI. So, certainly we believe that you really need to think about cyber resiliency, as the posture that you really need to put more effort into, to make sure that the data that you rely upon is able to be recovered in a good known state whenever you may need to.
It's a really interesting idea. Cybersecurity is cyber resilience. So in other words, a malicious actor has probed your firewall and maybe entered. So you haven't necessarily blocked them, but now you need to respond to them really well. What does that look like in real life? What's an example of how would you use AI to repel that individual?
Well, it's not so much to repel. I think one of the things that that the industry leverages AI today is for anomaly detection. You know, and you know, quite often, you know, many parts of the market from a vendor landscape perspective, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into identifying, you know, malware, identifying ransomware, and really the position that we take is that rather than looking for specific, you know, bad code, ransomware signatures, we look at the data that you have under management, and looking at the backup of that data, we look for anomalies. You know, we do things like full content indexing, and rather than looking for signatures of ransomware attacks or malware, we're really looking for anomalies within the data itself. Anything that changes from a day-to-day basis. One of the nice things about the backup and recovery process is that it happens on a regular basis. Right. So the ability to compare good backups against bad backups and identify differences in what you would assume to be similar data copies day after day or whatever period you're using from a backup cycle perspective allows solutions that leverage AI and also machine learning to actually build a model of what good looks like. And I think that becomes an important element about how defenders and how vendors within the data protection space can actually identify anomalies to a very high degree of accuracy.
All right, that's a fascinating point. I think that really brings me to the next question. You talked about this a bit. What are the actionable steps you recommend to modernize data protection and recovery? And it sounds like comparing backups using AI or ML. But if you're going to give some real world advice to modernize data protection and recovery, what are a few steps you'd say?
Well, that's certainly one.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I do think when you think about modernizing data protection, when you're investing in enterprise AI infrastructure, you know, one of the things I think you need to start thinking about is treating your AI workloads as another critical workload within the environment, whether or not you're taking advantage of AI infrastructure within the public cloud, or what many large enterprises are investigating is deploying AI infrastructure within their own enterprise data centers. Mm-hmm. And certainly, AI infrastructure has a number of elements. You know, you have the training data, the training you know, sources that you then leverage and feed into the AI models. Mm-hmm. And then you have the prompts and responses that you create and receive, you know, based upon the AI model that you've created. All three of those levels of the AI infrastructure, you need to think about how you're going to protect. Certainly, a lot of the AI infrastructure that you tend to see in the market is very much based upon a Kubernetes container-based infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So certainly, you know, picking a data protection offering that has a strong capability to protect Kubernetes, you know, is certainly a good choice to make. But then also, what you want is the ability to tailor your data protection policies and procedures to the AI infrastructure that you're using. And one way to do that is to pick a data protection solution that has a very strong set of APIs, you know, and give you the ability to drive the policies that you need for the specific AI infrastructure that you deploy by using a very much an API first data protection solution in order to build what you need.
The API, you know, focusing on the API first approach Does that also mean you can switch out solutions easier because it's simply a question of plugging in a new API, or not necessarily? You're not thinking that way.
I think often APIs tend to be specific to specific solutions. So I think the order of the day is to do a good evaluation of what you may be using, and certainly you can imagine that most enterprises they're already doing backup and recovery using a particular vendor that they may have been working with for a number of years.
Sure.
The question is, and one of the things that we see is that as the enterprise infrastructure environment and the workloads that exist within that environment change, then quite often that's when you tend to get organizations invest time in looking at, is the data protection solution that they're using today going to be able to continue to protect all that they need to do as they go forward, and so especially as they start looking at enterprise AI infrastructure. So certainly, we've seen opportunities where we're having new conversations with clients as they start talking to us about, we're interested in deploying enterprise AI infrastructure, and one of the things that we talk a lot about, and it's a phrase that is emerging in the market. We talk about the concept of an AI factory, which is really an umbrella term for the infrastructure that you need to deploy AI infrastructure, whether it be compute, whether it be networking, whether it be storage, client technology, but also data protection. And certainly, we see data protection as an integral part of an enterprise AI deployment. So, that's where you're starting to see opportunities to have new conversations with clients about how to protect these new workloads.
That I think is maybe the most central question. You may have answered it, and that is, I think so many companies are wondering, I want to buy a solution, but I'm not sure it's going to work now and 3 to 5 years from now. How do I shop for that and figure out when I'm shopping how this is going to work, 2 years from now and 4 years from now? And it sounds like your answer to the question is, does it have that AI factory approach? It can do all those various things. Is that your answer to the question? Like, how do I shop for something and know it's still going to be viable 2 to 4 years from now? What are the telltale clues I should look for?
Yeah, I think some of it is looking at what data protection vendors have to say about their use of AI and their strategies for protecting AI. I think you look at the data protection landscape, and there's the ability to bring generative AI into data protection solutions. That's certainly one element of vendors taking advantage themselves of generative AI. But one of the things that we haven't seen a lot of discussions about by many vendors is, when you deploy generative AI solutions for specific business outcomes, how do you actually protect that environment, the data that environment is relying upon in order to drive those business outcomes? So, I think you really need both sides of the equation. You need vendors that are very active in bringing AI and generative AI into their portfolio, but you also need vendors that have a good handle on how to protect those new AI workloads. And I think that's something which, we've certainly been, investing in ourselves, with our new data protection offers. I think the reality, James, is that things are moving fast. AI infrastructure is more than likely going to create a large amount of new data that all needs to be protected. I think that because of that, your data protection solution needs to be able to handle both the the speed of change and the scale that will come, with these AI workload and the AI infrastructure that goes along with them.
Makes perfect sense. Well, I think that all brings us to the question of the future of data protection and AI. What do you see in the next 1 to 3 years? I'm wondering, will we not get to a place where the infrastructure is basically safe because of the power of AI and generative AI? I know that bad actors will always have it and good actors will always have it, but I'm thinking back to, for example, your idea of examining the backups using AI and ML, and is this backup still in good and whole? I mean, it seems like there'd be so many ideas that we could implement with AI that eventually the infrastructure would actually really be safe, and the idea of malware and attacks would begin to fade away. Is that world ever going to come to pass, or you don't see it necessarily?
Yeah, unfortunately, that I think is
wishful
along the
thinking.
lines of we see a future where we can always be 100% secure.
Right.
I think we often talk about there's no such thing as absolute security. I think that one area we haven't really touched upon is strategies around things like zero trust architectures.
Right.
I think that you're certainly seeing the industry and organizations within the market really look more closely at zero trust architectures to make their whole environment, including any of the things they do from an AI perspective, more inherently secure. But back to the point that even with those strategies, the question is, can you ever be 100% sure that you're 100% secure?
Right.
And I think that really goes back to what we started the discussion about, is that you have to plan for failure. And I think that that's kind of like one of the organizational models that I think is important, is that you have to accept the fact that yes, you want to do everything you can to keep the environment secure, but you also have to plan for the time when something happens that you need to recover. And certainly part of the challenge, we talk about things like social engineering, we talk about things like malware. There's so many different attack vectors that you really need to plan for the ability to always be able to recover your business whenever you need to, and certainly plan is a very key word there. You don't want to be thinking about recovery in the moment. You need to plan for the ability to recover. You need to rehearse the ability to recover and make it almost second nature, so that when you need to use it, you're not building a set of processes to get your business back up and running. And I think that's something which is so important with the changing landscape that companies are having to deal with.
Planning and rehearsal. There's often too little of that, for sure. Rob, I think you said it. Fascinating material. I learned a lot. It's going to be a really interesting sector to watch, for sure. I hope you come back and talk with us again sometime.
Thanks a lot, James.